Greetings to all. I am Praveen Kumar. I am working as Assistant Professor in the Department of Computer Science Engineering in Kamaraj College of Engineering and Technology. Now we are going to see about serializability in DBMS. Serializability, we are going to see about schedules and types of serializability and testing of serializability. Now we see what is transaction. Transaction is the set of instructions and executed by a single logical operation. So that is called transaction. So that is set of instructions executed by a single logical operations. That is called transaction. Next one is schedule. Schedule means sequence of operations are executed in a concurrent manner for the multiple transaction. That is called schedule. Sequence of operations are executed for multiple transactions in a concurrent manner, that is called schedule. So here we have mentioned three transactions. Those transactions are T1, T2 and T3. Here what is the schedule is following means first T1 transaction is executed by following read operation for the data item A, and T2 operation is T2 transaction is executed for the data item A by following read operations. At last T3 transaction is executed for the operation read followed by data item A. So in this sequence the data items are executed for the transactions T1, T2 and T3. So first one is executed R of A, then second one is executed R of A for the transaction T2, and last R of A is executed for the transaction T3. So in this order data were executed. So that is called schedule. Then next one is serial schedule. So serial schedule means nothing. One transaction is executed, after that another one transaction should be on the waiting mode. So what is it happening here? So only one transaction allowed at a time of execution. So that is called schedule. So transactions are executed serially one after another. So that is called serial schedule. So when one transaction is executed, no other transaction is allowed to execute at that time. So in these schedules are following consistency. Okay. So here two transactions are mentioned. Those transactions are T1 and T2. In this first transactions, two data items are involved. Those all are A and B. So here based on the data item A, two operations had happened here, read A and write A. Then based on the data item B, two operations had happening here. So first one is read B and write B. So this is the first transactions executed in a serial manner. So at the time T2 not allowed to execute. So once the T1 is executed, after that the control is passed over to T2, then the following instructions of T2 is executed. So in this order following by the serial. Next one is non-serial schedule. What is non-serial schedule? Non-serial schedule means instructions are executed interleaved or mixed mode of operations. So that is called non-serial schedule. So what is the meaning of that? Not allowed in a serial manner. So that is called non-serial schedule. So that is called interleaved or mixed mode of operations are allowed here for execute the multiple transaction in concurrent manner. So now we see the example. Here two transactions are mentioned. Those transactions are T1 and T2. So in this T1 transactions, read and write had happened for the operand A. So we can say operand or data item. So once the control is over for the transaction T1, then control move to the transaction T2. So in this transaction T2, read operation is mentioned for the data item A. Okay. So here only read only mentioned here, that remaining values are not mentioned here. So read means that write should be happen, not mentioned here. So that operation is interleaved. Write of A is interleaved here. So that is going to pass to the transaction T1. So control is switch over from T2 to T1. So that is called interleaved manner because that operation is not fully completed. So that is called interleaved or mixed mode of operations. So at the same time, if we see here, so in the transaction T1 R of B is mentioned here. So in this time the right of B is not mentioned here. So that is mentioned in the transaction T2. So that is called interleaved. So these two values are mentioned here, interleaved. Okay. So here this is called as mixed mode. So this is the operations followed by non-serial schedule. Then second one is, what is serializability? Serializability means to making the non-serial schedule operation into serial operation, that is called serializability. So basically two types of serializabilities are using here. First one is conflict serializability, next one is view serializability. Both serializabilities are following non-serial schedule. So first one is conflict serializability, next one is view serializability. Now we see the types of serializability one by one. First we will go to see about conflict serializability. Okay. What is conflict serializability? Conflict serializability means to swapping the non-conflict operations during the time of multiple transaction, that is called conflict serializability. Swapping of non-conflict operations, so that is called conflict serializability. So here two operations are mentioned here. First one is non-conflict operation, next one is conflict operations. Non-conflict operations are read of A, read of A. Same data item, both transactions are mentioned. At the same time, here R of B and R of A, this is also possible, and R of A, W of B, this is also true. W of A and R of A, this is also true. W of A and W of B. So these combinations are mentioned as non-conflict operations. But if we see the conflict operations, only same data item allowed and one write operation should be involved. Next one is view serializability. All the conflict serializabilities are view serializability, but view serializability does not need to as a conflict serializability. Okay. So here three conditions we have to consider. So first one is initial read. So here the two schedules are mentioned, so that is S1 and S2. So here which one is the initial read? So here T1 transaction is the mentioned the initial read. So here T2 transaction mentioned the initial read. So this is the initial read here. The next one is update read. So which one is update after the read? So that is called update read. So here read after update. So that is called update read. So here anything happened. Final rate is, so here which one is the final rate? So this one is the final rate because which one has write at the final, so that is considered as a final rate. So here this one is the final rate. So this is the operations we have to consider: initial read, update read and final rate. Now we find out given schedule is V serializability or not. Okay. So here three transactions are mentioned in the given schedule, right? T1, T2 and T3. Three data items are mentioned. Those data items are A, B and C. Okay. So for the data items we have to calculate the values. Okay. So first one is initial read. So here for the data operand A we have to consider the initial read. The initial read is happened and here also the initial read is happened. So we have to mention T1 comma T2. Then next for the operand or data item B, where had happened here. So T3 had happened and T2 had happened. So we have to mention as T3 comma T2. Then next, for the operand C, where had happened initial read. So here the read has happening here at the transaction T2. So we have to mention the C operand as T2. Okay. So this is called initial read. Okay. Next term is update read. So in this update read, how do you write it? So update read means read after write. So here read had happened and write had happened at the T1. So this is called update read. So T1 we have to mention here and B we have to consider. Read of B here and write of B here. So this is called update read. Read after write. That is called update read. So T2. T2 we have to mention here and the next one is T3 and T3. So after read update has happening here. Read and update. So we have to write as T3. So next one is final write. So how do you write the final write? So which transaction getting the write operation at final, that is called final write. So here we have to consider the data items A. So here, so this one is the final write, I think, yes, because no other transaction having the operand A as a final. So we have to consider as T1. The next WB, where is the WB? So here, so this is the WB, so we have to mention as T2 and C, where we have mentioned the write operation for the data item C, where we have mentioned. So here WC has mentioned, so we have to mention here T3, that's all. So in this way we have to draw the values, initial read, update read and final read. Okay. So now we have to create the link. Okay. So for the operand A operand, so how do you make the link? T2 to T1 we have to make the link, T2 to T1. Okay. And the operand B, how do you make the link? T3 to T2 and C, if you consider the C, how do you make it? T2 to T3. So these are the final values we have got it. Okay. So now we see this is the write operation. So this is the read operation. So T1 write before T2 has read, T1 write before T3 has read. So how do you make this statement? T3 to T2 and T2 to T1. So this statement is true, and at the same time if we consider the, so we have to combine the A and B, we will get the result like that, and combine the B and C, what we will get it? T2 write before T3 read, at the T2 write before T2 has read here. So here overlap occurring means, so this is not a view serializability, because given schedule is not view serializability. Thank you.